What is up, everyone? Happy freedom. Welcome to another episode of Coffee with Hooligans. Appreciate you guys being here. Hope you're having a good Monday. Make sure you hit that like button. More likes, more hooligans. Let me know how you're doing in the chat. We're going to read through the schedule really quick, and then we'll make sure everything's running. So at 2 p.m., which is in 11 minutes, we got KJP staggering out on stage. Of course, she'll probably be late. So we'll be starting the live with a video titled "A Poll Saying Teens Are Not Enjoying Life in Social Media Age." There's a lot with that. I'm always talking about how social media is hurting us, and that's what that video is about. Next video is titled "Make English the Official Language of the U.S." I think that's going to be an interesting one to cover. And then we have a video titled "Florida Drag Show Law Blocked by a Federal Judge," which is totally ridiculous. And then we have a video titled "East Palestine Residents. They are money drunk in this little town." They're referring to that train derailment that happened that we covered last week. They're talking about that, and then they're giving us an update of how East Palestine is still not doing that well ever since that train derailment. Then we'll be wrapping things up with a video titled "Musk vs. Zuckerberg. Billionaires Serious About Cage Match." I keep seeing stuff about this, so I thought we would put that out there. I don't know if they'll actually fight, but it would be really interesting to see those guys get down. What's up, everyone over on YouTube? What's up, Gregory? What's up, Mr. Satan? What's up, Lifelike? What's up, Matthew? What's up, JB? Let's see. What's up, Anthony? What's up, Debacles? What's up, Shanti? What's up, Salty Ragu? What's up, American Hillbilly Me? Happy freedom, you hooligans. Let's see. What's up, Toy Mafia? What's up, Ohio Kyle? What's up, Damon Walker? What's up, Freckles? Appreciate you guys being here. What's up, Robert? What's up, Robert Jr. and Robert R? Appreciate you guys. Happy freedom. What's up, JP? What's up, Be a Blessing? Appreciate all of you hooligans being here. What's up, everyone on the JeffMAC Live secret YouTube channel? What's up, Shadow? What's up, Relic? Happy freedom. Did you listen to Justin Johnson? I don't know who that is. I will pull that up. Check it out after the live. Maybe I have heard this. I don't know. We'll check it out after the live. Thank you for letting me know. What's up, everyone over on Twitch? What's up, Snooks? Happy freedom. What's up, everyone over on Kick? What's up, Two Ruby Shoes? Happy freedom. Oh, what about Odyssey? Odyssey is supposed to be down for maintenance, so I don't know if we're going to have things running on Odyssey or not. It seems like it's running. I don't know. I keep getting notifications about Odyssey doing maintenance today, so if we have issues, I assume that's why. What's up, everyone on Rumble? Hopefully Rumble runs smooth today. When we covered the Orange Eagle over Saturday, I think it was, they kept kicking us off the live, and I don't know why that was happening. Hopefully it was just a fluke. I don't know. It was really weird because I even set up a whole separate live to connect to, and then they kept kicking that one off too. So I don't know if Rumble was going through things or what was going on, but either way, it looks like we're running now. What's up, Astral Hammer? What's up, Rasta? What's up, Patty? What's up, Mr. Bill? What's up, Gaston? Happy freedom, hooligans. Appreciate you guys all being here. What's up, everyone on jeffmaclive.com. Alright, we're going to get started with this very first video titled "A Poll Saying That Teens Are Not Enjoying Life in the Social Media Age."
A new poll shedding light on what they call the new Great Depression. Teens in the United States not enjoying life, being vocal about it. The poll done by the University of Michigan shows that social media has played a very big part. The report found that teens are saying things like, "I can't do anything right," or "I do not enjoy my life," or "my life is not useful," about twice as much as they did a decade ago. This as teen drug use and suicide are at historically high levels. Here to discuss is Dr. Jeffrey Gardier, a board-certified clinical psychologist. Also back with me is Betsy McCaughey, among other things, a mom and grandmother. Doctor, the numbers are off the charts. Rates of teen depressive symptoms increased massively since the mass popularization of the smartphone in the early 2010s. Are you seeing this in your practice? Talk to us about this, sir.
Yes, absolutely. We're seeing it starting at around those dates that you talked about, around 2010, 2012, moving forward, before certainly the pandemic. The pandemic has certainly made things worse with the isolation that our children experienced. What we've learned from all of these studies is social media can be very harmful, especially because it does interfere with the face-to-face, person-to-person interactions that are so important for development in maturation and having a peer group.
Yeah, Betsy, they say that these kids are spending up to 9 hours a day on these screens. It's a problem that I know that we have in our house. A lot of people are dealing with this. According to Monitoring the Future, a study of the behaviors and attitudes and values of Americans from adolescence through adulthood, nicotine vaping, now one of the top forms of substance abuse, marijuana, hallucinogen use. Now Mark Zuckerberg is pushing hard on virtual reality environments. We're talking about significant mental health impacts here, aren't we?
Significant. I read the study myself, but I'm looking at my own experience. I'm a grandmother of 4, another one on the way. Good news. And when my grandkids are visiting, which they often do, I don't want them to be on those little machines. I say to them, you should be out helping make dinner. You should be playing with our neighbors' kids. You should be playing board games. Things that interact with other human beings. And instead, when these kids are isolating, they're taking in all of this bad news instead of realizing, seeing in the faces of the people around them that they're loved and appreciated.
We're looking people in the eye,
That's
Doctor.
right.
Do schools need to do more to educate kids on the dangers of being online and also how to stay mentally and emotionally healthy? I just have a few seconds for you.
Yeah, absolutely. The former lieutenant governor is absolutely correct. We need more face-to-face interaction, but it does have to be a partnership between teachers and parents to make sure that they spend less screen time and more time in person instead of virtually.
Especially, so important, especially during the summer months where the kids are out of school. Dr. Jeffrey Gardier and Betsy McCoy, thank you so much to you both.
Well, we talk about that stuff all the time, about how social media is not good for you. Just having screen time is not good for you. It does something in your brain. So when you feel like you're accomplishing what you're seeking to do, whether you're playing a video game or you're interested in what video is next and stuff like that, to accomplish the very small goal, releases dopamine in your brain. And with kids spending so much time in front of a screen, well, not just kids, everyone, we're developing dopamine addictions. So we seek out and crave that fill. We got to do something with our little devices and whatnot. That way we'll get that dopamine and we'll feel like we accomplished something. That's why you can scroll on TikTok or whatever, and next thing you know, you look over and 2 hours has gone by. It's because you're feeding that dopamine addiction. When you're a kid or a teenager, especially like 15, 16-year-olds, where they're full of energy and want to be recognized as a real person in the world, even though they're too young to be doing that, and they're all rambunctious and stuff. Suffering from dopamine addiction can it affects you just like any other addiction. If you go through withdrawals from not getting that dopamine fix, you become irritable and all that kind of stuff. And so, I mean, teenagers in general, I don't think are very happy, or at least they don't think they're very happy. And then suffering from dopamine addiction on top of that is hurting all of us. Plus, I think social media itself is skewing how we perceive the world and how we perceive each other. That's why we're not nice to each other. We're all miserable. It seems like everyone is miserable all the time, and the smallest things can set off a big conflict between people. And I think social media plays a big part in that because it shapes how we perceive the world. Donald, I remember the world before social media. Yeah, so do I. But there's a lot of people that don't, just because they're young. I mean, think about being young and how you felt like you knew everything. You're like, you can't ground me, I'm grown, I know everything. Just imagine how kids feel who have access to phones and have their whole life. By the time they're 15, 16 years old, they really do think they know everything. It's not good. What's up, Nikki? Happy freedom. Thank you so much, Mike, for gifting 10 memberships over on YouTube. I really appreciate you, Mike. Thank you so much. If you guys get one of those gifted memberships, make sure you thank Mike. That stuff is not free. Let's see, just read through the chat a little bit. I got the screen pulled up with KJP, so when she comes drunk and staggering out on stage, we'll know. We'll get her up there. Eric, parents need to. Talking about regulating screen time. Yeah, because they mentioned in that video that the schools need to warn teenagers more about screen time and stuff like that, but it's really up to the parents. We talk about it all the time. Take care of yourself, take care of your kids, because if you don't, the government will, and you don't want to give the government that kind of power. I think another problem is that parents aren't even informed. I wouldn't know about half that stuff if I didn't take a course in college about it, and it wasn't about social media. It was about screen time and working as an audio engineer. It takes a long time to mix and master music and to correct audio and stuff like that, and eventually you get to a point where you're like over tweaking things. You start off by fixing things, but then after you spend so much screen time, you start hurting things, and you're not really clear if you're moving things in a better light or a worse light. And so you got to take breaks. Breaks is important for you to reestablish what you're working on, brainstorming and stuff like that. If you get caught in a moment of brainstorming, after a while you don't know if you're working towards the goal or away from the goal anymore, and that's why you got to take a break. That's why I'm also telling you guys, when you spend a lot of time working, breaks are fine, but after a while you need to go do something else and recharge your batteries. Otherwise you're just hindering your perception of what the goal is. And I wouldn't know any of that if I didn't take that course and read all those books we had to read in order to pass that course. And now I'm seeing it in big ways because of what we do here. I've seen so many hooligans come in, go into Gilded or Discord or whatever, and we're all studying stuff and we're paying attention to something that's happening in the world, and then after a week or so we have people fighting with each other, we have a lot of infighting happening, and then we'll have somebody spiral out of control. Just basically push everyone away, call everybody names, and then just disappear. And they might come back after some months or they may not, but it happens because you're burning yourself out. And it all has to do with that dopamine addiction and stuff that we're all suffering from. And once I think adults are more aware of that, it's a lot easier to regulate your kids and be like, hey, you've been on that phone all day, you need to get off that and go do something else, because otherwise they're just suffering from dopamine addiction. In that course that I took, they were saying that you shouldn't have more than 2 hours of consistent screen time in a day. Like, you do 2 hours of screen time and then don't look at another screen for the rest of the day. Go do something else. Any more than that, you're becoming a dopamine addict, and you'll suffer from withdrawals and stuff. Like when you see kids playing the game and it starts off like, oh man, I'm losing, but then it turns into like screaming and crying and cussing at the TV and throwing the remote. That's because you're not getting dopamine, because you're not winning the game, and now you're suffering from withdrawals and you're acting just like a drug addict without drugs. And that's what that is. So any more than 2 hours of screen time in a day, you're actually hurting yourself, but nobody knows that. And so how are you supposed to teach your kids that? Most adults don't even know it. It's rough stuff. Scrolling through the chat here. Thank you so much, Tumbleweed, for gifting 5 memberships over on YouTube. I appreciate you, Tumbleweed. Thank you. Let's see. M-Rank, my daughter loves your hand ink. Oh, well, thank you. That's awesome. I appreciate it. Winning streak. Yes, I went to Full Sail University. I graduated with my bachelor's degree in 2016. What's up, Sandra? Happy freedom. What's up, Dana Janet? Appreciate you being here. What's up, Danny C? Last responder, Tommy Temper sent you. Well, I appreciate you being here. Thank you, Tommy Temper, if you're around. That's awesome. Let's see, just reading through chat really quick. Let's see what the next video is. The next video is 5.5 minutes. We'll give KJP a little bit of time. She's 2 minutes late from stepping on stage, but I already seen Fox News and all them send out their notifications saying that they're going live with the press briefing pretty soon. So I imagine any minute now they'll flip that screen over. Let's see. Robert, ever seen The Social Network? Shows how Zuckerberg stole Facebook when the developers hired him to write code. Mark is the richest thief in America. I don't think I've seen that specifically. I know there was an episode on a show called Lie to Me that I used to watch all the time before it ended. I think it got canceled or something like that. And they did an episode that was similar to how that works. I know a little bit about that Social Network movie, but I haven't seen it. But that's how those coding people are. They're really smart, but then they're also like really isolated in a lot of situations. So if they find a way to get one over on you, that's why a lot of them become hackers. That's why hackers exist. They're smart, and it makes them kind of like narcissists. And so then they want to see what they can get over on people because they're just so proud of how clever they are. What's up, Ting Ting? Happy freedom. Be a blessing. Were you in the storm path yesterday? We did have a storm yesterday, and it was like hard thunder and lightning, like shake the house. Klaus Daniels was, full siren around the house. But it only lasted like 30 minutes. But I guess more inland, it was a bigger deal. Electric force was going on in Rothbury. 60,000 people, maybe 80,000 people were there. They were evacuated yesterday because the storm was so bad. But where I was, it lasted like 30 minutes to an hour, and it was over after that. What's up, Daryl? Happy freedom. Robert, Trump crushed it in Michigan last night. I didn't know that he was in Michigan, but I knew that he was live yesterday. What's up, Truth? Happy freedom. What's up, Manuel? Snugs, Justin plays the guitar. Yeah, I think I've looked up Justin before, but I haven't seen anything recent. What's up, Music Maker? Appreciate you being here. Let's see. We'll just put this on the screen. A few of the videos I have are longer, so we'll just wait for KJP. If it starts to get to 10:15 after and stuff, we'll just play the next video and she can wait for us. We're always waiting on her or it or whatever. They passed those new laws here in Michigan. I'm pretty sure they passed it. So now you gotta respect everyone's pronouns, or you'll do 10 years in prison for hate crimes. That makes me want to go outside even more. Lucky, if it's me, text me if you need me. Let's see. Yep, here we go. New sign language person. We'll see how this goes. Oh, what are they signing to us? Nobody's talking. Are they talking crap? They want to go? They don't want these problems. What's up, Lucky? What happened to Old Man Walter? New screw-ups. Deleted IG off your phone? Yeah. Instagram, they're catering to people that hurt kids. I haven't been on Instagram at all ever since I found all that stuff out. I wasn't really on Instagram that much before then, but yeah. Old Man Walter, he screws up every day. I don't have anything new on him today, though. What's up, High Plains Drifter? Happy freedom. Appreciate you being here, Dharma Agent. What's up, Sweet Tat? Winning streak. I went there to see my friend graduate in 99. It was really impressive. A man gave a speech, quit his job, sold his stuff, said he's going to win an Oscar. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Full Sail is interesting because people come from all over the world to go there. And a lot of places in there are modeled after places all over the world. Like the library there is modeled after some famous library in Amsterdam or something like that. They do a lot of interesting stuff at Full Sail, but I'm sure they're full woke over there. I'm glad I went there when I did, because I can't imagine what it's like now. They probably have, toasters and unicorns walking around crapping in litter boxes and stuff like that. So I'm glad I went when I did. Ting Ting, do I get 10 years if I call a person a dork? If they say that you're calling them out of their pronouns and they feel emotional duress or distress or whatever the phrase is that I'm supposed to be saying, then it's 10 years in prison. You'll be arrested. Free speech is gone from Michigan now. Oh, here we go.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. So a couple things at the top before we take questions. Today marks the anniversary of 3 landmark Supreme Court cases which were consequential in affirming the basic truth that every American should have the right to marry the person they love. 10 years ago today, the court's ruling in United States v. Windsor v. Hollingsworth v. Perry made significant strides laying the groundwork for marriage equality in our country. They were followed 2 years later by the Supreme Court's ruling of Obergefell v. Hodges, finally recognizing that LGBTQ+ Americans have a constitutional right to marry who they love. These monumental cases moved our country forward and they were made possible because of the courageous couples and unrelenting advocates in the LGBTQ+ community who fought for these hard-won rights. Last year, President Biden was proud to build on their legacy by signing into law the Respect for Marriage Act, guaranteeing the rights and protections of LGBTQ+ and interracial couples, and he continues to call on Congress to pass the Equality Act to ensure equal rights under the law for all Americans. Our work is not over, but today we celebrate the progress that has been made, and we recommit ourselves to the work ahead. As you all know, this week, the entire Biden-Harris administration is highlighting the work we've done to grow the economy from the middle out and bottom up, not the top down. The president's economic strategy has powered the strongest recovery of any major economy in the world. This morning, you heard the president announce $40 billion towards ensuring every American has access to affordable, high-quality, high-speed internet. On Wednesday, the president will deliver a major speech in Chicago to highlight how his strategy of growing the economy by growing the middle class is delivering for the American people. Throughout the week and clearly next several weeks, you'll continue to hear from leaders across the administration on how the president's economic plan is delivering results for the American people. With that, as you all know, Admiral is here to answer any foreign policy questions that you may have on the news of the day. John, the podium's yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. Look, I know there's
This guy.
interest out there in events in Russia over the weekend, so just a few words at the top from me. As you all just heard from the president, the United States closely monitored those events, with President Biden receiving literally hour-by-hour updates from his national security team throughout the weekend, and those updates continue for him. On Saturday morning, the president convened a call with his top national security aides to discuss the developments and any impacts that instability in Russia could have as we prepared for a range of scenarios. And the president also convened calls with many of our allies and partners throughout the weekend, and those calls continue. National Security Advisor Sullivan, Secretary Blinken, Secretary of Defense Austin also spoke with a number of their counterparts as well. Now, as the president noted, it was important that both internally, here inside the administration, and externally, with our allies and partners, including with Ukraine, that we all shared our perspectives on what was going on, and we all stayed on the same page. We also made clear to all our allies and partners that the United States was not involved and would not get involved in these events, and that we view them as internal Russian matters. We delivered that same message to the Russians themselves through appropriate diplomatic channels. I'll emphasize, as the president did just a little bit ago, that it's too early to speculate on the impact these events might have or to reach any definitive conclusions, except one, of course, and that is that no matter what happens next, we're going to stay closely coordinated with those allies and partners, and we're going to continue to stand with Ukraine. As we're speaking here right now, Ukrainian forces are still fighting for their country. They're still trying to claw back captured territory. They're still taking, and they're still inflicting casualties. So whatever occurred in Russia this past weekend did not change those facts. Didn't change the facts for us, didn't change those facts for Ukraine. And they absolutely are not going to change our continued support. So with that, I'm happy to take a few questions.
What implications do you expect this episode to have on Wagner's power and ability, both inside Ukraine as a fighting force? Can it continue to be a fighting force inside Ukraine, but also more broadly in Africa, where they have a big footprint? Where does Wagner, do you think, go from here? Do you have any early read on that?
No, we don't. And we don't know the answer to your question. It's just too soon to know. We recognize that Wagner still has a presence in Africa. I think we have worked to hold Wagner accountable. They are listed as a transnational criminal organization. We have sanctioned them. We will continue to take...
They're transnational?
To try to limit their ability to continue to sow chaos and violence wherever it is. But it's just too soon to know, after the weekend's events, where Wagner goes as an entity, or where Mr. Prigozhin goes in terms of his leadership of it.
Do you know where Prigozhin is?
I don't.
Ukraine is warning that Russia has completed preparations to potentially blow up the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station. Is that your assessment as well?
I'm not going to get into specific intelligence. I would tell you that we're watching this very closely, seen that reporting. We have, as you know, the ability near the plant to monitor radioactivity, and we just haven't seen any indication that threat is imminent, but we're watching it very, very closely.
And more broadly, as Secretary Blinken said, this has exposed cracks in Putin's power. How concerned are you that Putin could now be more desperate, more unpredictable, to the point that he could take more extreme measures to try and maintain his grip on power?
Yeah, I won't speak for Vladimir Putin or hypothesize about what next steps he might take or might not take. I think it's important to take a step back here and remember that the Russians still have tens of thousands of troops inside Ukraine. And that, as I said in my opening statement, there's still active fighting going on. The Ukrainians are still trying to claw back territory. The Russians are still vigorously trying to defend against those efforts by the Ukrainians, and casualties are being taken even as you and I are talking. And I think it's important to remember that. So what we're going to stay focused on is making sure that Ukraine can continue to succeed on the battlefield and not speculate about what this might or might not do on the political spectrum inside Russia. As President Biden said very well earlier, this is an internal matter for the Russian system.
Go ahead, John.
John, do you see President Putin as being weakened as a result of these events over the weekend?
Again, we're focused on what's going on in Ukraine. This is an internal Russian matter. And I think it's important to remember that Mr. Putin still commands a very large and a very capable military. And the bulk of that military is across the border in Ukraine. And that military is defending itself against Ukrainian attacks. And we've got to stay focused on what really matters mostly in front of us, and that's helping Ukraine succeed on the battlefield. And that's what we're going to do.
Whether there were U.S.-Russia military-to-military contacts over this?
All I can tell you is that we, through various diplomatic channels, conveyed those messages to Russia directly. One, that there was no U.S. involvement here, nor will there be, or would there be. And that we expect Russia to observe its obligations, its international obligations for the protection of diplomatic personnel inside Moscow.
Do you have any,
actually, throughout the country.
Just a last follow-up on that, do you have any indication that Russia thinks that the U.S., the West, NATO, etc., were involved?
Well, I can't begin to speculate what Russians think or what Mr. Putin thinks.
Emphasizing that as the president.
Yeah, look, we saw. We saw some social media activity by Foreign Minister Lavrov, who seemed to allude that some sort of investigation was in the offing at the suspicion of the involvement of Western intelligence services. And I think we could all spare Mr. Lavrov the effort by just making it clear there was no U.S. involvement whatsoever, no Western involvement.
I wanted to follow up that as well. Given the emphasis both you and the president have made today, do you think that issue of U.S. involvement, or our ability to know that something was going to happen in advance, contributes to the instability of the moment?
We're all concerned by any potential for instability in Russia, given the stakes and given what's going on in Ukraine. And I'm not going to talk about intelligence matters one way or the other here. The rift between Mr. Prigozhin and the Wagner Group and the Russian Ministry of Defense was playing out in public for all of you to see. The tensions, the frustrations, the anger, the accusations, all played out publicly.
Lying makes you
was
weak.
No secret whatsoever. Now, what that tension does inside Russia, again, that's an internal Russian matter. What we've got to do is not get distracted by that and make sure that we're focused on supporting Ukraine.
I want to follow up on a different subject briefly. At the question and answer event with the President and Prime Minister Modi, our colleague Sabrina Siddiqui of the Wall Street Journal asked a question of the Prime Minister, and since that time she has been subjected to some intense online harassment from people inside India. Some of them are politicians, they have associations with the pro-Modi government, and in part they've been targeting her because of her Muslim faith and questioning her own heritage. because this was supposed to be about democracy and in some form, wanted to find out what is the White House reaction to the fact that a journalist posing a question to a Democratic leader is getting that kind of pushback.
We're aware of the reports of that harassment. It's unacceptable, and we absolutely condemn any harassment of journalists anywhere, under any circumstances. That's completely unacceptable. It's antithetical to the very principles of democracy that you're right, were on display last week during the state visit.
Go ahead, Richard.
Thank you, Kirby. So do you agree that the counteroffensive, the Ukraine counteroffensive, has gone more slowly than expected? And do you analyze that considering the Wagner Group will be busy doing something else, that it will help this counteroffensive?
I don't know what the Wagner Group's going to be busy doing here. Again, I think it's too soon to Amar's question. It's just too soon to know how this is going to play out, whether in Africa or elsewhere, certainly in Ukraine. And I am not, I have said before, and I'll say it again today, I'm not going to do armchair quarterbacking of the counteroffensive from this podium. That's up to President Zelensky to speak to. Our focus is on making sure that they have what they need to succeed, whether it's training, tools, equipment. And you're going to see another round of support announced from this administration for Ukraine in terms of weapons and capabilities this week. So we are focused on that. That's where our heads are.
And just to make sure, Kirby, that I understand well, the NSC, how much did the NSC knew about the development of this Wagner movement towards Moscow before it started?
Yeah, as I think I mentioned to Kelly, the dispute and the tension between Wagner and the Russian Ministry of Defense was widely known. It was public.
Rolling towards Moscow.
It was all that tension was public. I'm not going to talk about intelligence matters.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ed, and then we'll go to the back.
Okay.
Ed goes first.
Thank you, John. Thank you for doing this. So, what should we call what transpired over the weekend? Is it a mutiny, coup, or attempted coup, an armed rebellion?
We're not slapping a bumper sticker on it, Ed.
In the U.S. assessment, was the objective ever really to directly threaten Putin or the Kremlin?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
In the U.S.'s assessment, was it ever the Wagner Group's intent to directly target Putin or the Kremlin?
Again, I would let the parties speak for themselves here in terms of what transpired and what motivations there were for these actions. That's not something that we could accurately or even appropriately speak to. What I can speak to is we made sure that we lashed up early and have stayed lashed up with our allies and partners to make sure we all have the same kind of perspective on this and we're approaching it from the same way, and that we made appropriate communications with the Russians about their obligations to protect our diplomats and to make sure that they knew we weren't involved.
You were describing early attempts to communicate with the Russians about what happened. Did they respond in real time to any of that outreach?
There were appropriate diplomatic discussions that occurred over the course of the weekend, again, to send those two messages.
So is the U.S. confident the Russians would be responsive in the event of a nuclear or other real crisis, given how they were this weekend?
I would just tell you, Ed, and this has been the case for the last 16 months. I mean, Russia is a nuclear power, that we have been monitoring as best we can Russian strategic posture, their nuclear capabilities. That continues. And we've seen no indication. Outside of the blustery rhetoric, we've seen no indication that there's any intent to use nuclear weapons inside Ukraine. And I can also assure you that we've done nothing, we've seen nothing that would compel us to change our own strategic deterrent posture.
But just given how the interactions went over the weekend, you're confident they'd respond in real time if there was some other kind of...
We had good, direct communications with the Russians over the course of the weekend. It's our expectation that that would be able to continue going forward.
Just to button up real quick, given all that interaction this weekend, what you guys have seen, can you say right now who's in charge of the Russian military?
The Russian military, I mean, first of all, I wouldn't, it's not my job to speak for another military, but there's absolutely no indication that there's been any changes that we've seen in the chain of command for the Russian military forces.
John, in the back.
Thanks, Karine. John, the NATO summit is just a few weeks away. How have the events of this past weekend in any way changed or modified the agenda for the NATO summit?
I think it's, again, too soon here. This just happened over the weekend. So I think I'd be fibbing to you if I told you that there was some sort of big agenda item changed because of what happened over the weekend. We'll have to see how this plays out. It's just too soon to know what the impacts are. It's going to be an important NATO summit regardless, because we are now, almost a year and a half into war here in Ukraine. We've got a new NATO member in Finland, and hopefully soon a 32nd member. So there's an awful lot on the agenda to speak to, and it's a critical time for the alliance. The president's looking forward to it.
Does the administration subscribe to the view, as it relates to Russian leadership, who essentially leads that country, that the devil you know is better than the devil that you don't know?
I'm not sure I completely understand the question, but let me tack it this way, and if I'm wrong...
I can try a little bit.
Okay, let's try, because you lost me there a little bit on the devil stuff.
Well, I'm sorry to get into...
He doesn't like when people talk bad about the devil.
Prefer to have Vladimir Putin leading Russia, or an entity like the Wagner Group, or someone named from the Wagner Group leading the Russian government?
We believe it's up to the Russian people to determine who their leadership is, and we would prefer to see Russia not invade their neighboring countries. We would prefer to see Russia, since they already did that, remove all their troops from Ukraine and end the war today, which they could do. That's what we prefer.
Justin.
Thanks. John, you said a number of times you've declined to comment on Putin's grip on power in Russia by saying it's an internal Russian matter. Is that a deliberate decision by the U.S. government to avoid contributing to the notion that the U.S. was somehow behind this, or does the White House simply not have an assessment at this moment of his grip on power?
We're just not going to involve ourselves in speaking to an internal domestic Russian issue right now. We're staying focused on supporting Ukraine. And I just want to disavow you of any idea that the reason why we're saying we weren't involved has something to do with not wanting to comment about the situation in Moscow and Mr. Putin's leadership. It was important to say it on the face of it, that we weren't involved, and we have no intention of being involved. What we are going to be involved in is supporting Ukraine.
And then there's been Brent crude increase this morning. There was higher European natural gas prices. How closely is the administration monitoring potential energy price shocks as a result of instability in Russia?
We've been watching it since the beginning of the war, actually before the beginning of the war, and we'll continue to do that.
April.
John, I want to kind of get into the weeds off of Jeff's question on weakness. Are you concerned about the instability in Russia because of the nuclear capability? If they have to come out stronger, they could use that. Is that the reason for your concern about instability?
I think you got to take a broader view of that, April. I mean, the reason we would be concerned about instability in Russia is the war in Ukraine predominantly. Yes, Russia's a nuclear power, and yes, that's of concern, and yes, we continue to monitor that. But I mean, I just think if you look at the scope of recent events, again, over the past year and a half, there's a lot of reasons to be concerned about stability in Russia and the impact that could have on the Ukrainian people and on the European continent.
Said over the last year and a half, going back to what Jeff said, this administration acknowledged that they were shocked that it took Russia so long. They have not shown to be the power, the military might that everyone thought they were. And then what happens this weekend, does it show cracks in Russia's military might and who they are as we perceive them?
Yeah, again, we're not going to characterize the events of the weekend or be able to contextualize it for you beyond what we've said before. It's just too soon to know what impacts this is going to have on Ukraine and on Russia, quite frankly, throughout Europe. It's just too soon to know. But broadly speaking, I mean, we're now in 16 months of war, a war that was advertised by the Russian side as only going to be taking a few days. And now we're 16 months into it. Clearly, you don't need me to tell you, but the history of this conflict has shown that the Russian military is not as vaunted as perhaps they wanted to characterize themselves as. But, and this is a big but, and I think it's an important point to make.
Huge.
As Ukraine conducts offensive operations this summer to claw back some of that territory, they are running into a Russian defense. And the Russians have invested in those defensive capabilities. And so, as I said in my opening statement, casualties are being taken on both sides. There's a lot of active fighting right now in the east and the south of the country. And again, not to sound like a broken record, but what we're trying to do is make sure that the Ukrainians have everything they need to be successful in that fight.
Good job. John, is the president at all disappointed that this episode came and went and Vladimir Putin's still in power?
The president is focused on supporting Ukraine. We're not taking sides in this internal matter. The president is going to make sure that we're staying focused on Ukraine.
He did say, though, in March 2022, for God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
Regime
and this
change
might have changed that.
Regime change is not our policy. We've been very, very clear about that. What we're focused on is making sure Ukraine can succeed on the battlefield.
What was his demeanor like when he was getting the hour-to-hour updates?
Look, I wasn't with the president when he was getting these, so I'm not sure I'm qualified to speak to his demeanor. As you know, the president very keenly tracks foreign policy developments around the world. His national security team was giving him updates literally hour by hour throughout the weekend, and he was absorbing all that information and making sure that in the context of absorbing it, he was also sharing our perspectives with allies and partners. And as I said, those conversations, it wasn't just one and done. He's had several over the course of the last couple of days, and you're going to see that continue going forward.
And one last one on the conversations with our allies. You had said we were not going to get involved in these events. We would not at any point. But if this had turned to a nuclear situation, what was the conversation with our allies about how that would be addressed?
I wouldn't speculate on hypotheticals, Jacqui. I wouldn't get into hypotheticals. They were talking about the situation as we were seeing it unfold. They were communicating with each other, our allies and partners, about their perspectives, what they were seeing, what we were seeing, sharing as much context as we could, and making sure that we all had sort of the same sight picture, and that we were basically all reacting in real time in roughly the same way. It was important for that to be the case, and so that's really where the focus was. On the nuclear thing, I mean, again, I'm not going to hypothesize here, but we continue to watch this very, very closely. We've seen a lot of reckless rhetoric coming out of the Russian side. We watch it closely. We just have seen no indication that Mr. Putin has any intention of using nuclear weapons inside Ukraine or anywhere else for that matter. And I can assure you we have done nothing to change our own strategic deterrent posture when it comes to that potential threat.
Make America great again.
Status. Does the U.S. have any assessment on whether his safety was ensured as part of this deal, or is there a belief that his life could be in jeopardy?
We don't know the parameters of this deal. We weren't a party to it. I'd point you to the parties to it to speak to the details of it. We just don't have visibility on that.
And then just in terms of the war itself, do you have an assessment of just how much, to what extent the Wagner's forces have been diluted in Ukraine and what that might mean for the Ukrainian troops?
Diluted with a D or diluted with a T?
The T. Just in terms of the size of the force in Ukraine now, as opposed to last.
Oh, you mean siphoned off?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's unclear right now where the bulk of the Wagner forces are. I mean, we've seen some reporting, mostly through press and social media, that many of them moved back across into Ukraine. But we're not in a position to verify or validate those reports. So it's really unclear where they all are and where they all might go or what they might do in terms of the future. It's undisputed, of course, that Wagner played a role, particularly in the fight for Bakhmut. They were reinforced by Russian military forces, and that had a major factor on their ability to take that town. But as I have said many, many times, I mean, Wagner's approach here was just to throw bodies at the fight, largely ill-trained, ill-equipped, and poorly led, but just body after body after body, and they suffered a lot, tens of thousands of casualties just taking Bakhmut, all for a town which I've also said didn't have any strategic value to the Russians one way or another.
Nadia. Thank you. Can you confirm that Mr. Prigozhin is in Belarus as Senator Warner seemed to indicate?
I cannot.
Okay. Can you give us your assessment of the group? Can it survive without him, or do you think that he was a central figure, that he was able to control it all its operation,
Yeah.
whether it's in Ukraine or in Africa?
I think I'd give you the same answer I gave Amr. It's just too soon to know what the future of Wagner is going to be. We're going to stay focused on the group. Of course, we have to. They do operate outside of Ukraine, and we have levied lots of sanctions against them, and we'll continue to hold them accountable as appropriate.
Thanks, John. Earlier today, President Biden said that he would be speaking with additional heads of state this afternoon. I wonder if you can give us any details about who, the substance, the timbre of those conversations, about whether what he's trying to convey today is different or evolving from what he's trying to convey over the weekend.
The call that he was alluding to earlier is to the Prime Minister of Italy, Prime Minister Meloni, and that call should be taking place just about now. We'll give you a readout when it's over, but it'll be very much in keeping with the kinds of readouts you've seen over the last 48 hours.
John, Prigozhin, in his first message since all this went down, said that he wanted to avoid Russian bloodshed and that he marched in a demonstration of protests not to overturn power in the country. Does the U.S. buy that?
We're not taking a position on Mr. Prigozhin's motivations.
And then secondly, has the U.S. been able to corroborate the allegations that Prigozhin made that he says were the pretext for this attempted insurrection? He said that 30 Wagner fighters died after a Russian military attack on their position on Friday.
Cannot confirm those reports.
And then lastly, do you have any... I know you've said that you have no idea where Prigozhin is right now. Is that correct?
That's correct.
What's your sense of where this goes? Do you believe that this is over now, that his attempted insurrection failed, it's not going to restart again, or are you still monitoring for the possibility that Wagner fighters might attempt something like this again?
We don't know. We don't know where this goes or whether this is really the end, which is why we are going to continue to monitor it and why the president is still getting routinely updated and will in the coming days.
And very quickly, do you have any sense of whether Ukraine was able to take advantage of this chaos over the weekend?
I'm not sure what you mean by take advantage of it.
Take advantage from a military standpoint in terms of their offensive in the east of Ukraine.
Again, I would let the Ukrainians speak to their military operations. All I would say, and it's why I wanted to put it right up top when I started here, is that there's a lot of fighting going on in the east and south of Ukraine. They are still trying to get the territory back from the Russians, and they are still inflicting and taking casualties. So the fight goes on. Now, how much and to what degree in any given area that fighting was adjusted or changed, slowed down, or sped up as a result of the weekend, I just couldn't speak to it. Certainly nothing discernible from our perspective, but again, the Ukrainians would have to speak to their operations.
Earlier today, the president said that he and allies had talked about planning for several different scenarios over the course of the weekend. Could you speak to some of those scenarios?
No.
And he and President Zelensky have communicated yesterday. Have they spoken today? Can you give us a sense of their conversations?
There has not been another conversation with President Zelensky since the one that we've already read out to you that occurred yesterday. But as you heard the president say, he does expect to be speaking again with President Zelensky very, very soon. And of course, we'll read that out to you when it happens, as we always do.
Thanks, John. The president earlier today, and you here, broadcast the message that was sent by the West privately to Putin. Is there a message that you would send publicly to the people of Russia?
This says, I think, the best thing I could do is point you back to the president's speech when we went to Warsaw several months ago. And he had a whole section in there about the Russian people. And that would still be our message today. That this is our issue with what Russia's doing in Ukraine is with the Kremlin and the Russian military and, of course, their enablers, such as the Wagner Group. It's not with the Russian people. It's not with the men, women, and children that live in that country and who didn't make this rash and reckless and illegal decision to invade a neighboring country in a completely unprovoked way.
Thank you. Can we just talk about the White House's assessment of other nations' reactions to whatever we're calling this thing over the weekend? Specifically, Tehran's reaction, Beijing's reaction, and New Delhi. Did Washington engage with any of those three? And then also, we know that the NSC had meetings in Copenhagen this weekend with BRICS countries. Can you just tell us what came out of that and whether they've adjusted their posture on this?
So on your first question, as we have these conversations, certainly at the president's level or at the cabinet level, they will be read out to you. So I don't have any other conversations to speak to, and I certainly would not get into the business of characterizing another country's attitudes or reflections or perspectives. They can speak for themselves. We've been very focused on how we're looking at this and how we're tracking things. On the meeting in Copenhagen, I think you know the National Security Advisor attended virtually, and Senior Director for Europe, Amanda Sloat, was there in person in Copenhagen. It was a meeting called by the Ukrainians, hosted by Denmark, but it was a Ukrainian meeting, and it was really about having a discussion about the principles of peace and this idea of a just peace and where that can go and what's the right next steps to try to achieve a just peace in Ukraine. And it was a valuable discussion. I'm told productive and in a good variety of countries that were there, representing places from all over the world. Again, I'd let those countries speak for their participation and their takeaways, but our takeaway was it was worth the time and worth having that discussion.
Thank you, Karine. Thank you, Admiral. What does the White House make? It's on the Middle East. What does the White House make of Prime Minister Netanyahu's call today to eradicate the idea of establishing a Palestinian state and to cut off the Palestinian aspirations regarding establishing one?
I haven't seen those comments, so I'm going to refrain from a specific reaction to them until I've had a chance to see them and look at them and discuss that with the rest of the team. I will only say that the president remains committed to the value and the viability of a two-state solution.
There is some concern in such countries like Poland and Lithuania, neighboring Belarus, about possible movement of Wagner's troops to Belarus. You just said that you don't know where they are, but will you be able to track them? And if there is a movement of Wagner's group's soldiers to Belarus, would it require strengthening eastern flank of NATO, just in case? And on another topic, is there any movement on Sweden's membership to NATO? Are there any signs that may suggest that Sweden may join NATO before Vilnius summit?
The president's still optimistic that they will, and we look forward to welcoming them in the alliance. The conversations between Sweden and Turkey continue. We encourage that dialogue. And we hope that it'll very soon come to a positive conclusion. On your first question, we just don't know what the future is here for Wagner and where those troops are going to go, what they're going to do. We just don't know. So this idea of tracking them, I mean, I couldn't begin to answer that question for you with specificity. What we are going to track is what's going on inside Ukraine. And we're going to make sure that we're also in constant communication with the Ukrainians about what they need to be successful. That's where the focus is. Now, on your question about the eastern flank, we have already bolstered the eastern flank. President Biden ordered an additional 20,000 American troops to the eastern flank of NATO, and they have stayed there. So we now have about 100,000 American troops on the European continent, the most since World War II. And that's a significant presence, and we're going to continue to evaluate that with our allies along that flank. If we have to adjust, we'll adjust. But there's already been a significant contribution by the United States to the eastern flank of NATO.
No concerns about security of NATO summit in Vilnius if Wagner's troops move to Belarus?
Again, that's a hypothetical I can't possibly answer in terms of where they're going to go. We're looking forward to a productive NATO summit, and of course, security for summits like that are always a prime concern for all the nations involved.
Thanks. A couple questions. The fact that this Wagner convoy could travel a main highway without being stopped by any kind of air power, does that reflect to you any kind of issues with Russian command and control?
I can't speak to that.
He's not going to answer any of these questions. Can we talk about something else? Jeez, get KJP on the stage. We want to see her cry.
Is that going slower than it should be?
President Zelensky himself, I think, spoke publicly last week, saying that that it's going slower in some areas than he would have liked. He's the commander in chief. He gets to make those determinations and he gets to give those orders. As I said earlier, the Russians have invested a lot in the last 6-8 months in terms of defensive capabilities. In some cases, their defensive lines are 3 deep. And by 3 deep, I don't mean just 3 feet. I mean miles and miles and miles deep, but 3 big lines of defense. They knew that the Ukrainians were going to want to take back territory in the spring and summer months, and they worked to prepare it. And defense, as any military history student will tell you, defense is the stronger form of war. And so the Ukrainians are running into Russian defenses. And by President Zelensky's in his own analysis, it has slowed them down a little bit.
Is there a possibility or even a hope on the U.S. side here that the instability that we're seeing kind of in Russia between this and Wagner, that weakens, I guess, the Russian defense?
Again, too soon to know. Just too soon to know.
Just a couple more.
Thank you, and thank you, Admiral. So can you please expand on the early assessments from the U.S. on the impact of the developments in Russia on the war in Ukraine and whether it signals the beginning of the end for the war?
Again, I think it's, not to sound like a broken record, but it's just too soon to know what the impact to the war in Ukraine is going to be as a result of the events over the last weekend. And I just don't know that it would be helpful to speculate that. I do want to keep centering you, though, and reminding you that there are tens of thousands of Russian troops and vehicles and capabilities, air and ground, in fact, and sea, that they have still available to them to try to defend against Ukrainian offensive operations. And they are doing that. I mean, even as all this stuff happened over the course of the weekend, there was fighting inside Ukraine from these two forces.
How concerned are you at this point that Putin could take any more extreme measures to demonstrate his control?
That's going to be a decision for Vladimir Putin to make, and I wouldn't begin to speculate about what that might be. We have been watching Russian actions and leadership since the beginning of actually before the beginning of the war. And one thing that we have always talked about, unabashedly so, is that it's in nobody's interest for this war to escalate beyond the level of violence it has already visited upon the Ukrainian people. That's not good for, certainly Ukraine, and not good for our allies and partners in Europe. Quite frankly, it's not good for the Russian people.
Yeah, Sebastian.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. During this whole drama, was the administration happy, content that all the nuclear weapons in Russia were like totally under control the whole time, or was that actually something that was beginning to worry people over on this side, given the chaos and briefly actual complete no one having a clue who's in charge anymore?
Happy and content are two words I don't normally associate with monitoring nuclear activity.
It's something that kicks, in different ways.
Not us. Look, we monitor this very closely, and all I can tell you is that we've seen no indication that Mr. Putin is interested in moving in that direction, and nor have we seen anything that would cause us to change our own deterrent posture. That's really as far as I can go on that.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean a question on Mr. Putin, but rather there was a period of however many it was, 12, 16, 18 hours, where actually no one was totally sure who was in charge, and it's still a nuclear-armed country. So that period.
As I said, instability in Russia is something that we would take seriously, and we certainly had lots of questions over the course of the weekend, as did you, about the situation in Russia and the issue of stability. And we did have, and were able to have, in real time, through diplomatic channels, conversations with Russian officials about our concerns. I just have to leave it at that.
Given the role that Belarus appeared to play, at least in ending this uprising, does that give any new insight from your vantage point on the relationship between Putin and Lukashenko?
I don't think so. I mean, Lukashenko and Belarus have, basically been a surrogate for Mr. Putin and for Russia for quite some time, certainly before this war started. And Belarus has, even though they have not actively involved themselves in the fighting. They have certainly allowed Belarusian soil to be used for staging activities, for the launching of attacks inside Ukraine, for the storage of Russian capabilities. I mean, they have been an enabler for Mr. Putin. So I don't know that there was a lot of shock or surprise that Mr. Lukashenko got involved. But again, I'd let those parties speak to that.
Last question, way in the back.
Thank you, Karine. Thank you, John. Do you believe this instability in Russia will have an impact on Beijing's relations with Moscow? Do you hope that China's support for the Kremlin will decline as a result of this?
We'll let the PRC and President Xi speak for himself. We don't want to see any country at all support Mr. Putin and make it easier for him to kill more Ukrainians. We want to see every country around the world sign up and actually implement the sanctions that are in place, the international sanctions, and not provide any ability for Mr. Putin to continue to operate his war machine. And we have communicated that not just to the PRC, but to other countries all around the world. Now, what they do about this is going to be for them to speak to. All I can do is tell you what President Biden's focused on, and that's making sure, A, we're staying.
What the heck is that nonsense? Hold on a second. I'm going to refresh the page.
And not provide any ability for Mr. Putin to continue to operate his war machine. And we have communicated that not just to the PRC, but to...
It's just a quick break. Just a quick break.
What they do about this is going to be for them to speak to. All I can do is tell you what President Biden's focused on, and that's making sure, A, we're staying...
What is going on with their deal here? Hold on a second.
And not provide any ability for Mr. Putin to continue to operate his war machine. And we have communicated that not just to the PRC, but to other countries all around the world. Now, what they do about this is going to be for them to speak to. All I can do is tell you what President Biden's focused on, and that's making sure, A, we're staying...
Why is their live buffering? I don't understand that. Hold on a second.
And not provide any ability for Mr. Putin to continue to operate his war machine. And we have communicated that not just to the PRC, but to other countries all around the world. Now, what they do about this is going to be for them to speak to. All I can do is tell you what President Biden's focused on, and that's making sure, A, we're staying...
I don't understand why their live is buffering. We're not buffering, but they are. I wonder if they're trying to pull their live down. I wonder if they're talking too much about those foreign countries, because you're not supposed to.
Any ability for Mr. Putin to continue to operate his war machine. And we have communicated that not just to the PRC, but to other countries all around the world. Now, what they do about this is going to be for them to speak to. All I can do is tell you what President Biden's focused on, and that's making sure, A, we're staying...
I think I've said this before.
We're going to put Fox on. This is the White House. This is their live. So we're going to put on Fox's because something's going on with their stuff.
Decreasing the deficit makes that a priority. We've seen that in a record number, $1.7 trillion in the first 2 years. That is something, because of what the president has put forward in his economic policies, he's been able to do that. And in the budget negotiation that you all covered and saw, one of the things that he made sure is that budget negotiation lowered the deficit by another $1 trillion. So this is something that the president certainly cares about and certainly has taken action and moved forward with making sure that his economic policy does just that. Look, more broadly as it relates to the student loan, we've been very clear. We think it is certainly important as we're coming out of this pandemic to give folks, and the pause is going to be lifted, as we all know, in August, to make sure that we give American families a little bit breathing room. That is what this does. And because of this, it is actually going to be able to put money back into the economy. If you think about people being able to buy a home now, if you think about people being able to actually do more with this burden that they've been carrying and they've had to deal with. So we think it's part of that economic policy agenda to make sure that we are not leaving anybody behind, but also building an economy that is important and that is also fiscally responsible at the same time.
Very briefly, Senator Manchin was here earlier today. Was there any engagement by the president or anyone else in senior staff on Acting Secretary Sue's nomination? And has there been any determination of how long she could stay in that role in the acting?
So as I've stated before, we believe that Julie Su is highly qualified to be Labor Secretary. As you know, she served as Deputy Secretary for 2 years, and now she's clearly Acting Secretary. And we are doing everything that we can in our power to make sure that she is successful in becoming the next Labor Secretary. And I think I've laid out actions that we have taken every day, even during the budget negotiation, to make those calls, to have conversations with senators on the Hill, and to get her through. I don't have anything to share ahead of that, but we continue to support a swift confirmation of her. I don't have a readout of a conversation with Senator Manchin in the last couple of hours, but I can assure you that our team here, Office of Leg Affairs, and other members of the different offices here at the White House has certainly been all hands on deck in trying to make sure that we get her through.
You hooligans are cracking me up in the chat.
To follow up on the press freedom issue that you touched on, can you give us a sense of the discussion between President Biden and Prime Minister Modi about that? What did they discuss, and what did President Biden say to him about not only press freedom but the other human rights issues that are so clear in India right now?
So as we've said many times, the president will never shy away on having those conversations with a world leader, a head of state, when it comes to human rights. He has done that throughout the past 2 years and through his career as a vice president, certainly as a senator. Not going to get into private conversations, but I think we have made ourselves very clear here on our view, and I'll just leave it there.
Did the president accept Prime Minister Modi's answer to Sabrina about the human rights issues and attacks on Muslims and others in his country?
You know, we were asked this question last week on Friday, and I think that is for the Prime Minister to answer, and for all you all to critique or write about it. I'm not going to discuss that from here. What I know is that we are committed. We are certainly committed to the freedom of the press, which is why we held a press conference last Thursday, which is why we thought it was important for you all to hear from both, not just from the president, but also from the Prime Minister, and for journalists to be able to ask a question.
Follow up on India. Thanks, Karine. I wanted to ask you about this new Bidenomics messaging push. Can you just give me a sense first of, how did you guys coin that phrase, or why did you decide to go with that branding going forward?
You don't like Bidenomics?
No, I'm just asking. I'm curious.
I think it's pretty clever. It's pretty good. It makes good sense. Bidenomics, right? It kind of flows off the tongue really well.
Bidenflation.
Look, what you're going to hear from the president, I don't want to get ahead of him. I think we've kind of laid out a little bit of what we are thinking, or what we think the president's going to lay out, or what he is going to lay out. Certainly it's a vision, right? It's a vision about growing the economy from the middle out, the bottom up. You hear us say that over and over again, because we believe that trickle-down economics does not work. And we have seen that over and over and over again. And what we have seen, even before the pandemic, is we've seen American families being left behind. And so one of the things that the data, if you look at the data and what we've seen from what the president has been able to deliver in the last 2 years, is an economy that's getting back on its feet, an economy that's actually delivering for the American people. 13 million jobs, unemployment rate at under 4%. When you think about wages going up, when you think about inflation at its lowest by more than 50% than it was a year ago, that's because of the work that this president has done, and he's going to continue to focus on what we can do to lower cost for the American people. And so that is incredibly important. Look, it's going to be a cornerstone speech as you've heard me say, is going to be an opportunity to talk about the historic progress, right, as we're talking about implementing those historic pieces of legislation. And so all of those things go hand in hand. And we believe that that is the vision of the president, and hence Bidenomics.
Well, one of the reasons I ask is because, the latest CNN polling showed that just 34% of Americans approve of the president's handling of the economy. So is there a risk that this new branding could backfire? And are you confident that this new messaging push is going to change Americans' opinions of the president's handling of the economy?
So we believe our job is to continue to speak to the American people, to lay out what it is that the president is doing on behalf of American families. And that is important. And we have the data to prove it. We have the numbers to show that his economic policy has indeed worked. Look, I kind of talked about this moments ago. This has been a challenging time for Americans, right? You had the pandemic. We just had my colleague here talk about the war that Mr. Putin has started in Ukraine, and what that has done to inflation, not just here but around the world. So we know that the American people they're dealing with a lot. But what we believe is that we have done the work. And we have shown that inflation has indeed come down. It is still too high, and so the president's going to talk to that. He's going to speak to where the American people are, and he's going to make sure that we lay out what is it that we have been able to do in a historic fashion to deal with what the American people is currently dealing with. But look, 13 million jobs, again, when you think about how Americans feel better about their personal finances, that is important. When you think about wages are going up, when you think about the really good paying, millions of good paying jobs, that union jobs that his policies are going to create, all the things are really incredibly important. So the president's going to continue to speak to that, and that's what we believe that is our priority to do.
So you're confident that you can change the public's perception of the economy?
We're going to try, right? I think the president, when he has a moment, when he is at the podium.
She has a lot of makeup on today. The whole side of her face is all red.
He speaks to what matters to the American people. He talks about making sure that we give Americans a little bit more breathing room. He understands what it's like at the end of the month when families are sitting around their kitchen table talking about how they're going to pay costs. That's why insulin at $35.
Families sitting around the kitchen table having discussion? No, that's not modern America.
Energy, making sure we're lowering costs for energy is so important. That's what came out of the Inflation Reduction Act. And that's just one piece of historic.
She sounds like old man Walter talking about sitting at the kitchen table blowing his dad or whatever they talk about.
Things that we have done that is, we believe that the American people need to hear directly from us, and that's what you're going to continue to do. Let's not forget the Invest in America tour, right? This is we're about to launch the second part of that tour where cabinet secretaries, you're going to see the principals are out there talking to the American people. So we believe it is important for us to do that, and that's what you're going to see. Yeah, Steve.
Follow up to Jeremy's question. Should we view Bidenomics as a response, answer to, or opposite of Reaganomics?
I mean, look, we believe Reaganomics doesn't work. We've been very clear. We believe that a trickle-down economy doesn't work. It has not worked. That is shown to be the case for decades now. And so what we have been very clear, you hear me say this all the time, building an economy from the middle out and bottom up. That's what we want to do. And every piece of historic legislation speaks to that, speaks to what the president wants to do, very loud and clear in historic fashion. Some of them in bipartisan way. We think about the infrastructure legislation, right? And what that has been able to do, bringing both sides together, making historic investments in our roads and our bridges. The president just talked about broadband this morning, historic investment in broadbands to communities that have been left behind when we talk about that. And so all of these things are important. And so he is, if you will, reimagining how we should build an economy, transforming how an economy should look like for the better, so that we, again, do not leave anybody behind. And it's not about just blue states. It's about blue states, red states, rural America, urban America. It's about everyone who he believes he is the president for.
I will just follow up.
He's supposed to be the president of the whole country. What are you talking about, crazy?
He left office with a better than 60% approval rating. It's argued, you don't have to agree, I'm sure the president doesn't, but many people believe that Ronald Reagan's record, his economic record, propelled the country to prosperity, born in America, the late 1980s growth, propelling it for growth of the 1990s.
She's about to fall over.
What I will say, and we've been very careful, trickle-down economics does not work. It just does not work. It gives hands out to special interests and big corporations. That's what we have seen. And that would increase the debt, and it has increased the debt. That is what we've seen in the last couple of decades. It outsources jobs and raised utility bills for families. That's why the president is making sure that we're bringing jobs back to the United States. Manufacturing jobs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs. We've seen manufacturers wanting to invest in this country. We have not seen that in a long time. Right? And so that is incredibly important. Utility bills, I just talked about what the Inflation Reduction Act is going to do. All of those things is building an economy, transforming the way we see the economy in a different way. In a way, again, that is equal, that has equity at the center of it, and leaves no one behind. And the president is very proud in what he's been able to do in the last 2 years. We understand there's more work to do, and certainly we're going to do that. Go ahead, Michael.
Thanks, Karine. The president has called the previous administration's policy of separating families who cross the border illegally a moral and a national shame. USA Today published a story today that details how the Justice Department is defending that policy in a series of lawsuits filed by separated families. So my question is, why is the administration going to such lengths to defend a policy that the president himself says is a moral and a national shame?
So look, the president repeatedly has said that Trump administration's family separation policy was abhorrent, it was unconscionable, and violated every norm of who we are as a nation. He's been very clear about that. He's repeated that, and that's why on the first day in office, he made sure to end the administration family separation policy. And what we've been able to do is we created a task force, as you know, where we've been able to reunite about 700 family members and also support families that were torn apart. And so we're continuing to do that work, and certainly that is not going to stop. Again, that's why we put together the task force. That's why we ended that very hateful policy. So when it comes to DOJ and what they're doing,
it's a very hateful policy.
On a litigation, I'm just not going to comment from here, but our actions policy-wise in the last 2 years, making sure that we reunite families, we still have that task force going, making sure we're supporting those families that were torn apart, ending that policy, I think speaks for itself. I'm just not going to get into the Department of Justice.
Are they friend or foe?
2 questions on the Montana train derailment. How confident is the administration that it's not going to have a negative effect on Yellowstone?
So just a couple of things on that. So obviously this is something that we are monitoring, the train derailment that occurred in Montana on Saturday, so a couple days ago. The preliminary water sampling conducted by the Montana Department of Environmental Quality and the EPA have not shown any risks to the public drinking water, which is obviously important to the community, to the state of Montana. EPA, Montana DEQ, and Montana Rail Link are actively monitoring water quality, and federal agencies, including the EPA and DOT, are coordinating with the governor's office and local officials to assist in the response. And obviously, as always, whenever something like this happens, the White House is ready and to offer any federal assistance. And certainly, we are in regular communications.
What was the chemical?
On the heels of this and East Palestine, is there anything more the president can do to prevent more of these from happening?
Well, I know the Department of Transportation certainly has been looking into this and evaluating these types of derailment. So I would certainly refer you to them. And I know that Secretary Buttigieg has taken this very seriously, as has the president. So we are doing everything that we can to address this issue of derailment across the country. But as it relates to Montana, as it relates to even East Palestine, that community, we certainly were all hands on deck in making sure that we provided what the community needed, and in this most recent situations, we are here to offer any federal assistance that the state of Montana might need. Okay, go ahead, John.
Thanks a lot, Karine. Over the weekend, Speaker McCarthy floated this idea of launching an impeachment inquiry targeting Attorney General Merrick Garland. And the focus here, according to the Speaker, would be Merrick Garland's weaponization of the DOJ. Well, what's your reaction to that idea?
So as you've heard me say repeatedly over and over again at this podium is that the President respects the Department of Justice independence. He respects the rule of law, and that is what you're going to see under this administration. So I'm not going to speak to anything that is related to that piece. But I will say more broadly, look, we've been very clear. I just laid out. We talked about Bidenomics. I was just asked by one of your colleagues why the President is focusing on this, why he's having this conversation with the American people, why we have coined this term. That's because the President believes that we have a lot of work to do for the American people, that this is the priorities of the American people, making sure we continue to build on the success that we've seen the last 2 years, continue to lower costs, making sure that we're implementing those historic pieces of legislation. Clearly that is now law, the bipartisan infrastructure legislation. When you think about the CHIPS and Science Act, when you think about the Inflation Reduction Act, all of these pieces of legislation that are now law, clearly, are incredibly important. And so that's what the President's going to talk about, investing in America. And it's unfortunate that congressional Republicans want to continue to focus on an issue that Americans that's not their priority. They want us to move in a bipartisan way.
Yeah, tell us what we want.
We saw that in November in the midterm election, and that's what they want to see. And we would welcome congressional Republicans to join us on working on behalf of the American people, working on the priorities that they care about, working on lowering costs for American families across the country.
If the Republican-led House goes down this path, they have the numbers, if they wish to do so, to impeach the Attorney General. They don't have the numbers, however, just based upon the makeup of the Senate. Would you say, Karine, that this is a waste of time on the part of congressional Republicans?
What I will say is basically what I just laid out seconds ago, John. It's just this is not the main priority of American families. They want us to come together in a bipartisan way to work on the things that they truly care about. When it comes to the Dobbs decision, right? When it comes to reproductive rights and reproductive health care, when it comes to making sure that we are working and focusing on lowering costs for American people. That's what they want us to see. That's what they want us to come together in a bipartisan way to deliver, to build on the successes that this president has done the last 2 years. Okay.
Thank you, Karine. I've got 2 quick questions. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is on the border, and he is escalating his attacks against the Biden administration, who, in his words, he calls, quote, the critical link in an illegal transnational human smuggling syndicate. I'm wondering if the White House has any response to that kind of rhetoric.
Wait, say that one more time, because I have not heard his remarks.
The governor says that the White House, in his words, is the critical link in an illegal transnational human smuggling syndicate.
So I'm going to be careful because, yes, he's the governor, but he's also a candidate, so I'm bound by the Hatch Act, so I'm going to be incredibly careful, and I'm not going to comment on campaign matters. What I can speak to is more broadly. And, I will remind you that congressional Republicans just voted. Literally, they just voted a few weeks ago, a month ago, for the biggest border security cut in history, the biggest cut in history when it came to the Default on America Act. That's what that was. Part of that act was to cut border security, and that's what they voted on. And meanwhile, what this president has done, he has secured record funding for border security. He has record number of agents and officers securing our border, and is implementing policies that have resulted in significant drop in unlawful border crossing since Title 42. That is what the president has done. And so, I'm, again, going to be very mindful in how I respond. But speaking more broadly, I would say the question is to not us, but it is to congressional Republicans and what they have done to make this situation even more difficult by cutting the budget for by voting to cut the budget for border security and not supporting this president and what he's been trying to do.
Question. It's not unusual for presidents to invite members of their family to official White House functions, like the state dinner last week. I'm curious, though, in light of some of the recent legal controversy, if the president communicated to members of his family not to conduct business on White House grounds. Can you tell us about any kinds of guardrails that are up?
So look, I'm going to be, again, very mindful because this is all connected to a case that the DOJ is currently overseeing. So I'm not going to comment on that specifically. But as you know, and we have laid out very early on in this administration, when it comes to ethics, when it comes to how we all kind of move about and how we respect clearly the government ethics here. This is an administration has been incredibly transparent on that and has put some very strict rules. And so I can speak to that.
What the hell is she talking about?
Forward and making sure that the people who work for him and himself are held to kind of a strict course of action, but I'm not going to speak to anything that's related.
She said nothing.
Think about guardrails for the president's family?
I'm just not going to speak to anything that's related to this case.
Do any guardrails exist?
I'm not going to speak to anything that is related to this case. As you stated, there are we've had when it comes to ethics, we take that very, very seriously here in this administration. Thank you, everybody.
Run, run, run. My goodness. She did terrible today. I don't know what happened with the White House press briefing live that they were running there. That thing buffered out of control. I noticed that Fox is a lot more clear. We're going to clip that last little bit there. We're going to be cutting some shorts of her saying a whole bunch of nothing. She didn't have nothing to say to that question about Hunter Biden. I was wondering if someone was going to bring it up. They figure if they wait till Friday and have a press briefing that nobody was going to talk about it, and then she pretty much got pushed out of the room, and then she was like, well, everyone had the weekend, we'll do a press briefing on Monday, they won't ask about Hunter Biden. Right there at the end, got her, made her run away. She packed her stuff up quick. She was like, see you later, got up out of there. She's so stupid. She probably cries hard after those press briefings. They were mean to me, hurt my feelings. Hand me the rainbow towel to dry my tears and feel about my feelings. KJP. Everybody was saying she got waxed up. She had all that makeup on. They were like, she must have roughed her wife up. Her wife gave her the business. I don't know what happened to her. She was LARPing hard today. We're going to move right into another video titled Make English the Official Language of the U.S. This is an interesting video, and to go from one to the other, first we got to cleanse the palate. Get that KJP voice out of our brain. Go ahead and get this started. Maybe. Do the thing. What is going on here?
One of the most effective.
There we go. There we go. Whoa. YouTube just crashed. What's that about? Hold on a second.
One of the most effective ways to protect.
All right, there we go. Let's get it.
One of the most effective ways to protect the freedom, growth, and stability of this country is to fight government dependency. Now, we do that by advancing policies that help give everyone living here the best opportunity possible to achieve their potential. Apart from the Constitution, in the most diverse nation in the world, the English language has been the one constant uniting force that has helped make this nation the success that it is. Finally, making English the official language of the United States is a winning issue. According to the United States Census, the number of people who spoke a language other than English at home nearly tripled from 23.1 million in 1980 to 67.8 million in 2019. Now, that's not a bad thing. Hear me out, though. What changed in this country is our mindset about what it takes to be a successful participant in the great American success story. Handout-crazed politicians on the left, primarily in blue states, big cities, and the Washington swamp, and those who enable them are in part to blame for this shift in mentality. You know, back in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, as legal immigrants flooded America's cities, escaping poverty, war, and a lack of opportunity, the American melting pot had many languages spoken in homes. But there was an acknowledgement that critical to those immigrants moving often from poverty into the middle class in one generation was a willingness to learn English. Immigrants had to make English a priority. Those new Americans didn't have road signs in other languages, they didn't have translators at their jobs, or expect to be catered to by the DEI lobby and lawsuits from liberal nonprofits. Most of them never received much of a handout at the taxpayer's expense either. They worked, they saved, and they did whatever they needed to do to pave their own street with the gold that they earned. You cannot achieve your potential as an American in the job market, academically, or even socially without reading, writing, and speaking English well. One would assume that's precisely why many Democrats oppose making English the official language. You know, this country used to be about making your own wealth, not benefiting from somebody else's. Part of that was a commitment to integrate in a way that brings the best cultural aspects of where you came from and adding it to American society. It was about sharing your culture with everyone else through our shared language. Making English the official language is very pro-immigrant, and it's a pro-diversity policy. We should want everyone in this country to succeed, support themselves, and contribute to society. Learning English is central to that achievement. Everyone wins with English. While our broken school systems are nonsensically teaching our kids Spanish or some other language they will barely ever use, the rest of the world is learning English, especially the Chinese. While the Americans' reading skills and writing skills hit new lows, English is now the dominant language of the sciences, commerce, media, entertainment, and diplomacy around the world. Spending taxpayer money to produce street signs and official government communications in other languages creates a crutch and reinforces the flawed notion that English proficiency is not important to national unity or individual success. Promoting English language skills will also give people a greater voice in our politics, which should be encouraged for legal immigrants who earn their citizenship. Ohio Senator J.D. Vance has reintroduced a bill long championed by Oklahoma Senator Jim Inhofe that has been languishing in Washington since 2005 to encourage stronger English adoption. It's time to finally pass the English Language Unity Act. The legislation would establish English as the official language, require government functions to be conducted in English, and introduce a universal English language testing standard for naturalization. Democrats have opposed the move for decades, and it's another example of them ignoring the will of the people. Americans get this. They understand how important this issue is. In 2013, a Gallup poll showed 72% of Americans across all ethnic and political persuasions believed that it was essential for immigrants living in the U.S. to learn English. Rasmussen has polled on this issue for years. Their latest in 2022 found that Americans supported a nationwide policy 78% to 14%. 31 states have made English their official language, and now it's time to make it a national policy. It's a very important message to send. You know, the left sometimes really proves that they couldn't care less about the real meaning of that great colossus standing in New York Harbor. You know, the golden door that she lifts her lamp beside isn't a gateway to a welfare check. She isn't a symbol of lower standards and dodging the hard work that it takes to make it here. She stands for the belief that you can help create out of many cultures one nation, united where your destiny is your own, and one language is the key.
Well, I thought that was interesting. Figured we would cover it. I see a lot of people saying that kind of stuff in a mean way, but I thought it was interesting how they kind of highlighted, like, you know, you can be all right here if you don't speak English, but if you plan on being a part of politics, you want to have a successful career and things like that, you're going to have to learn English, because the majority of people here speak English. So if you're going to be treating tons of people, or, you know, as a doctor, or even as a vet, or being a public servant of any kind, an office or anything like that, you ain't going to be the greatest of the great if you can't speak English. The majority of people speak English. So I thought that was an interesting take on it, because the only time I ever hear anyone talk about it, they're usually being mean to someone. They're like, you should speak what we speak and stuff like that. But I thought that was a more professional way to discuss the topic. So I thought that was interesting. Before we move forward, I want to give a big shout out to Chris, G10. Let's see if my list here is generating. Snooks, Mike, everyone that's been supporting through the live. I really appreciate all of you guys. There's been so much information we've been covering. I didn't want to talk over it, but I really appreciate all the support, the super chats, the donations, the memberships that have been gifted. Everyone's been joining the membership program today. You guys are awesome, and I really appreciate all of you. So this next one we're going to cover, and I think this one's really interesting. This is titled Florida Drag Show Law is Blocked by a Federal Judge. So there's a lot of states that are trying to make it so all age drag shows and stuff like that is a no-go. It's illegal, which it should be. The whole nature of the show itself is inappropriate for minors, I believe. I think most people believe that. And so they're passing laws to straighten things out, which is ridiculous that we even have to do that. Now, Supreme Courts are saying that that's an infringement on freedom of speech, and they should be allowed to do this wherever they want to. So if you see drag shows at school, it's federal judges that caused it. Hold on, I totally forgot. There's no actual audio for this. It is all words. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to restart the video, and I'm going to hop off the screen. That way you guys can read this, because half the stuff I can't even say out loud, but I think the words will come across on the screen and we'll be okay. But it's important that you guys read this. I think that's why they made this video the way it is because if they were to say this out loud, it may not be good for YouTube. So I'm going to restart the video. It's very short. It's only like 2 minutes long. And I'm going to pull myself off the screen. That way you guys can read it. So hopefully you guys were able to read that. I mean, it just, basically said what I had already stated, that Florida had passed a law making it so, well, they'd try to put into law that they couldn't just go and do these drag shows wherever they wanted to. This stuff's not appropriate for kids. It's not appropriate for all ages, not by any means. And a federal judge knocked it out. So now the only way for them to try and do this is to go to appeals court and try and get it pushed through. Federal judges believe this is an infringement on free speech. I don't know. I don't want to see more government overreach. I would like to see adults behave like adults and actually take care of themselves and kids, so the government doesn't have to take care of us and tell us the difference between right and wrong. And it's unfortunate that adults aren't doing that, because they're actual predators that are being protected by the Rainbow Brigade, because it's been hijacked. The whole rainbow movement has been hijacked by predators, and they don't want to admit it. Nobody's talking about that kind of stuff. And so, who pays the price? Kids. Kids are the ones that are paying the price for this. Adults, you make a decision. You're either for it or you're against it, and that's not a big deal because everyone has their own preferences. And I believe people can love who they want to love as long as it's not a child. But then when you're hurting kids, you're bringing it to kids, you're brainwashing kids, that is not okay. That's not okay, and we shouldn't have to pass laws. And if the federal court or the federal government itself is going to interfere with that, I say this every day, there's going to be bad stuff that happens. People are trying to do things the legitimate way. They don't believe that kids should be involved in this stuff, and they're passing laws and doing stuff the way you're supposed to handle things, in a legitimate way, a legitimate fashion. But then the federal government wants to come in and interfere with what we want, what the American people want. You know what's going to happen? There's going to be blowback. They won't be happy till there's blood in the streets. And so they better stop. They better stop. They need to leave kids alone. Big time. And they want it. They want Americans to have violence in the streets so they can come control us. But we can't let them hurt the kids. It's wrong. It is wrong. Pink lady. They think it's funny now, wait till the kids grow up. Yeah, they think that mental illness is a problem now. Give it 20 years of this nonsense and see what happens. People are going to be so messed up because of growing up with social media, growing up with phones, growing up with shapeshifters. Michigan's free speech is out the window now. If it's a he and you say she, you'll go do a decade in prison. What is life going to be like in 20 years? I don't even think we'll be here in 20 years. Not with the way stuff is going now. We need to take a hard turn and turn things around, because we're heading in the wrong direction. That's what I believe anyways. Donna, I have a mental illness and those people are crazy. Yeah. I think everyone to some degree has some form of mental illness or another. Where's zero? You know what I mean? Where's normal at? I think everyone has a little something going on or another. It's how you handle it. It's how you go about trying to have quality of life without infringing on others. How do you cope with life? And I think over glorifying all this mental illness and as it's like pushing it onto others, the Rainbow Brigade, the shapeshifters, telling people what they can say and can't say, that stuff it's not right. It's not right. And you could tell that everyone knows it's wrong because of the way they phrase everything. Like talking about curing yourself of pregnancy, which I hate saying that, but that's the only thing I can get away with saying on these platforms. But they phrase it as women's health rights or right to health care. So if you say, well, are you against women having the right to health care? And you think, well, no, I want everyone to be equal and have everything that they need. And they're like, so you agree with me? And you're like, well, yeah. Really, in their goofy mind, they're like, yeah, these people are for curing yourself of pregnancy too. And it's all word games. It's all word games with fluent definitions. If they were for the greater good, if like legitimately, not like what the SS was saying, but if they really cared about people, they wouldn't have to have these fluent definitions. They wouldn't have to phrase things a special way to get people on their side. They would be able to be more literal and direct to have people side with them. They know they're wrong. So they have to give them these fancy titles and flower everything up in order to get people on their side, because they themselves know they're wrong. And that's the only way that they can pull the wool over the eyes of people who are not up to par with what's actually going on around us. It's messed up. Real life libs are master manipulators of law language. Yeah, that's all it is. It reminds me a lot of going to court. If you've ever been to court, I'm sure you know what you say and how you say it matters a lot. Just like if you're being arrested or you're giving a report to an officer, the way you phrase things matters so much more than what actually happened. You could be in court for God only knows what, but if you say the right things and you express things in the right words, you can get out of it. It doesn't matter what you did. What matters is what's said and how it's said. And I always thought that was really weird when I would go to court and the way that they would phrase everything. But that's what Blue Team does all day. Their whole agenda, and not just Blue Team, but just softies in general, their whole agenda is to hurt everyone and to get their own way, and so they can just bathe in their own toxic nature. They'll still be miserable. You could give these people everything they want and bow down to them and kiss their ass, and they would still be miserable people, because they're the way they are, because they have hate in their heart. And until they change who they are, that hate will remain in their heart. It doesn't matter how much we cater to them. They will always be that way. And they're goofy about how they're going about this, acting like it's for the greater good of anyone else. It's not. It's not. It is mental illness that is being overglorified and pushed onto others, and it's wrong, especially when it comes to kids. Kids, allow kids to be kids. And I didn't realize this until I got in my 30s. Once you get over 25, you hit that 30 mark, this is all there is for the rest of your life. Till they put you in the ground, this is all you got. Debating politics, making money, paying bills, trying to have fun as much as you can while still being a responsible person. Do the best you can to stay on this side of the earth and not inside of a jail cell. And that's it. That's all we got. And most people think back to when they were kids, because that's the only time you were in life where you didn't know what was going on, because ignorance is bliss. Allow kids to be kids, because from 30 till they kick the bucket, this is all they got. So just let them be kids. And those predators out there, they're hijacking the Rainbow Brigade to try and interfere with kids. And you got federal judges like this who are knocking down laws that are actually put in place to protect kids. Those people are predators themselves in one way or another. Anyways, we're going to move on to the next thing here before I get myself all heated up and in trouble. This next video is titled East Palestine Residents. They are money drunk in this little town. That's what they're saying, not the unfortunate people that have to live there after what's happened. But they're going to discuss the toxic chemical spill, whatever that happened in Montana, although they won't tell us what the chemicals are. And then they're also going to reference what's going on in East Palestine, kind of like an update and all of that stuff. So let's go ahead and get that started.
Morning. Welcome back into Wake Up America. Cleanup is underway at the site in Montana where a train carrying potentially hazardous materials derailed in the Yellowstone River area over the weekend.
Yeah, it comes nearly 5 months after the toxic train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, and still many questions remain unanswered for those who live in that community. Joining us now for more are East Palestine, Ohio residents Tammy and Rick Chai. Thank you so much for joining us again. Tammy, I'll start with you. I just want to get your reaction to the most recent derailment and how the cleanup effort is being handled.
Well, I was really shocked when I saw that, and to know that it's hazardous materials going into that river. I don't exactly know what's going on with the cleanup there, because I've been totally focused on what's going on here. It's just been nonstop for 5 months.
Yeah, it's, and you hear about these now, and it's become commonplace, trains derailing, and they never tell us what hazardous materials they are. But you look at these images, and this is not like the train went off the tracks near the river. It went into the river in Montana. So really concerning stuff. And you look at the train cars like that; those aren't carrying grain.
No.
This is scary. Of course, we're keeping a close eye on that. But last week, back to East Palestine, Ohio, the National Transportation Safety Board held 2 days of hearings finally in your area as part of the ongoing process to try to figure out what happened when that train derailed near you guys on February the 3rd. Rick, what did you take away from those hearings?
First, I want to say that the first responders and thank our fire chief for saving our town. But as you look at all the information, when you get through all the muck and the hours of talk, temperature was going down in the tankers. They decided to blow it at 137 degrees, and then it dropped to 127, I believe. Oxyvinyl claims that there was no risk of polymerization to muck up the valves. I'm not sure why they blew it.
Yeah, Rick, it's been a while since we spoke, and I remember last time we had you on our show, you were taking video of the water and showing us how it looked. You could just see a film.
Right.
Is that still there? And how are people in your community as far as health conditions?
So I have video shot from last week. It is still horribly, horribly contaminated. I took a drone shot over the I call them Shamu tanks, 1.2 million gallons of toxic waste that's opened right near people's homes. The thing that I'm really disappointed in is if you want to see my videos, it's Tsaipod, TSAIPOD on YouTube. But the thing I'm disappointed in, Norfolk Southern is building a $25 million amphitheater and park in our little town. And that was just approved by the mayor and city council while people were suffering. They're displaced from their homes. How many homes could that buy? How many water filters and air purification systems could that buy? I'm going to use the phrase money drunk in this little town.
Wow.
Norfolk Southern's coming in with a bunch of money, doing things unrelated to the derailment and cleanup. Just to influence people, I believe.
Yeah, Tammy, if you have a comment on that, Tammy?
Well, I just think it's really sad. The way that it all played out, that it divided the community. And at this point, we have people fighting with each other who are otherwise friends. And there are still so many people that are not back in their homes. And the people that are in their homes close to the derailment site are ill. A lot of them are ill, children as well. So it's really a difficult situation. And
we're not saying we wouldn't love a new park,
yes,
but either do it simultaneously helping these people,
yes,
or do it afterward.
Yeah. What you mentioned they're ill. What kind of symptoms do they have?
People still get headaches, and children I know were having a lot of nosebleeds. One day from school, I heard there were like 12 kids sent home. This was like a month ago. But I know there have been children hospitalized with respiratory issues.
Yep. And we know that, that's anecdotal, but that's what you're dealing with on a daily basis in East Palestine, Ohio.
Well, it's not anecdotal for me. I have a lot of pictures of patients.
No, I'm not trying to discredit. I'm just saying, I completely agree with you. And there has been a lot of reporting about people being hospitalized and that sort of thing. So I'm not trying to discredit that at all. Tammy, we did learn as this investigation continues that, and I remember this burn 5 months ago, right after the train derailed. They did this burning of all the chemicals, and now we're hearing that maybe. And this was really bad for the community, but maybe this burn wasn't necessary.
Well, we watched the NTSB hearings all day on Thursday, and I watched them on Friday. And if I were on a jury, I would walk away concluding that this burn was not necessary after listening to all the experts. And I was really burned up, actually, listening to that. It was quite astonishing what I've learned about vinyl chloride in 2 days.
Yeah, Tammy, you've been very vocal on Facebook. We have your most recent post. What do you think is next, for your town? You mentioned that people are divided. So talk to us more about that.
Well, I think that people get tired and they don't have the strength to keep moving on, and they want it just to all go away. And then, there's money that comes in, so it makes them feel better. And they just think that maybe that's the solution, but it's not the solution. We need to band together and stick as one and really push Norfolk Southern to help people. So many people want to move out of the community. And my husband and myself we've started a couple of GoFundMe and Give Send Go sites to raise money. We were able to raise $10,000 to give to one person so far, but it's very slow going. And our goal is to help as many families as possible to move if they want to move. We're not getting the help.
Rick, final thought, please. Yeah, go ahead. About 15 seconds.
We understand that the town, it's important that you want it to thrive, but it's still heavily contaminated. And East Palestine Off the Rails, our Facebook group.
Okay, we will follow you. And obviously people still don't have homes. Tammy, Rick Chai, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, things are still not good out in East Palestine, Ohio. Old man Walter still never made his way out there. I'm surprised the reporters at the press briefing today didn't ask if he was going to go out to Montana or wherever the spill is, the new one that happened a couple days ago. They know. They know he's not going out there. And then the Norfolk Southern, they're building a nice little park out there. They're not, really helping anybody, but at least they're getting a park. So while your dog dies of cancer, you can, go play on the playground, I guess, until it's your turn. It's no good. It's no good. Just reading through the chat really quick. See Bravo burning equals spreading toxins. Yeah, they put that stuff in the air. They knew what they were doing. Robert's like nuclear fallout. Yeah, they pretty much nuked that area. Pink Lady, the feds could relocate people, but allocating $25 million to placing border crossers in homes in Chicago, awful. Yeah, we got homeless Americans, we got homeless veterans, we got people in East Palestine that are living in a toxic environment. No, let's bring in millions of people from outside the country. Just let them come here for free, give them free stuff, free housing, food, clothes. Care about them. Americans, nah, we're just here to pay the taxes. We're expendable. They don't care if we kick the bucket. Chris, someone needs to bang on the side of our server to our matrix. Maybe that'll make everything go back to normal, like banging on an old TV. Something. We need something. We need some normalcy around here. That is for sure. Sheep, Greta did it. Greta did it, yeah. Only if someone laid her on the tracks. That's the only way a train derailment's happening with her. I don't know. She gets so much special treatment. Flipping through the chat really quick. We got one more on the roster. Susie, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Yeah. It doesn't even feel like we're all united. It's just every man for himself. That's what it feels like. People are tired of being hate banged by the government, and now everyone's all bitter and vile. So we're going to cover this last one. It's titled Musk versus Zuckerberg, billionaires serious about a cage match. I don't know if they're actually going to do it, but if they do, I can cover it. We'll cover it on all the alternative platforms. I think it's too much violence for YouTube, but if we can see the cage match, we're going to cover it because it'll be awesome. We'll take bets and all that stuff. We'll bet stickers or pennies or something. It'll be awesome. It'll be awesome. Let's get it.
Could become reality. Can you imagine that? Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg in the cage, and they say they're absolutely serious about trading blows in the octagon. It all started with a tweet. We all thought Musk and Zuck were joking about it on social media, but this week Zuckerberg posted on his Instagram story, "Send me location." And by the way, I have locations to recommend. I want to see a billionaire fight in Miami where it's nice and warm.
You think it's for real, David? You think it's for real?
I think it's if they put an angle on it, like raising money, doing something good with it, billionaires to help, somebody. My pick, Musk. And I'll tell you why. Yes, 5'7" versus 6'1", all the height and weight difference.
Who do you guys got, Musk or Zuckerberg?
When you look at guys like Frank Mir, Dana White, when you look at all these guys, Tyrus, when they get in that octagon, when they get into that ring as boxers or as fighters, it's all about the attitude. You go in ready to do it. And I don't think Zuckerberg, who's more of a soy boy, can keep up with Musk, who's an alpha.
Okay. Do you want me to respond? Yeah. I did the first 4 UFCs where it's a 600-pounder. Like we had a sumo wrestler. That was before there were rounds. You had to be knocked out or choked out to do it. So you could go watch them online. If I watched a 160-pound guy crush 250-pound guys, if you know jiu-jitsu, if Zuckerberg's really training and Elon Musk prides himself on not training at all, he'll last 45 seconds.
Yeah, but Elon has a move that he calls the walrus, and so he just lies on top of his opponent and does nothing because he is larger in stature.
You know
so
what? I changed my vote then. Yeah. That sounds like, how do you beat that? How do you beat that, Lisa?
I want to make my argument for Elon. So he's taller, he's smarter, his IQ's higher, and he's 51.
By 2 points.
No, he's 51, so he's got some wisdom, but he's still able to move around and be a little bit scrappy. Also, he had some hardship growing up, right? So he's tough. He's had to go through some stuff. I don't know.
What, divorce?
This is never going to
No, when he was
happen.
young.
He's a street fighter.
He had bullies that beat him up. His dad was not nice. He went through a lot of stuff. So he's gone through hardship.
It's a lot of losers.
So he's a scrappy. So I think Elon Musk, with the size, the age, the height, the scrappiness, I think it's over for Mark Zuckerberg.
I don't think this actually happens. There's no way this actually happens.
It would be the best thing ever.
I mean, it would be so stupid, which means yes.
You know who'll stop them? Their lawyers. They don't want to deal with the liability.
Exactly. They are
How
too rich to
embarrassing
do
is this
this.
generation? Edison wasn't fighting Henry Ford. You know, it's like we have to take our CEOs and fight. Can't we just put them up on?
I think the skinny one in the yellow protests on the weekends with a rainbow flag.
Instead of presidential debates, just a cage match. Everyone in whoever
it's been that way already. It's becoming a motion in the United States.
Since I mentioned Dana, we got to get Dana White in here, all right? He's the UFC president. He said this would be the biggest fight ever in the history of the world. It would break all pay-per-view records. These guys would raise hundreds of millions of dollars for charity. See, that's the angle. Brian, that's the angle that works.
David, they don't want to sweat. Zuckerberg wants to fight other people that want jobs so he wins. Musk doesn't work out. You do not last in the octagon for 2 minutes because you're heavier.
He has a lot of kids. He has a lot of energy.
Your comebacks are ridiculous.
My older brother would just do that, like, because he was so much bigger than me. He would just hold me down, and then I would be.
Were you a trained fighter?
Much bigger.
Of course I am. Brian, have you seen me? What do you think? I've been a trained fighter my whole life.
I did not know that.
It's crazy that if you're that rich, maybe it's just really hard to get excited about anything because you're so rich that you need to go to these sorts of lengths to try to feel alive.
Hey, guys, let's go with some Zuckerberg awkward moments here. Let's try this.
I know that we don't exactly have the strongest reputation on privacy right now, to put it lightly. If I get through this speech today, it'll be the first time I actually finish something here at Harvard. While we may not live our lives a quarter mile at a time, I know at least some people here live their...
It's a robot-human fight.
Should Elon really be scared of that? I'm sorry, I see soy boy, Lisa.
Well, there's also been speculation that he might not be a human.
Jitsu, I've heard.
That he's a robot, so
is a thing.
that's not a fair fight.
We'll say that again.
Jitsu, I've heard it's a thing. Like, you're trained and you can actually...
No, but jiu-jitsu it's called.
Yeah, whatever it is.
It's not jitsu.
Whatever it is.
Okay, but it is real.
No, Brian, you haven't heard
It's so stupid.
This has been a longer segment than the two Russia segments combined. We're just going to
probably more
have we blown a commercial to talk about a fight that will never
happen? It'll never happen. No.
Thank you. I would say, by the way, Zuckerberg's trying to kill Twitter. So that's what started this whole thing. He's coming up with something
So put
to
it
kill
all
Twitter.
on the line.
Right. On
Twitter versus Facebook.
Yeah, the loser
Winner
has
takes
to keep
all.
Twitter. The loser has to take Twitter. Evidently,
never go on
it's
Facebook.
losing money.
Facebook's or isn't it like something? What is it called now? It's like Meta. Or like
People are really mean on
stupid.
Facebook. You think Twitter's mean? Look at the comments on Instagram. Some of your grandmas are really mean.
All right.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey,
My goodness, there's a lot there. First of all, I think the woman in the yellow or whatever she is, now I got to be worried about identifying people by woman and man. I think she's some sort of soft and stupid person. She didn't even know what jiu-jitsu was. She said jitsu. She's like, yeah, but he knows jitsu. What is that? What is that? You don't know nothing. Just go back in mom's basement. Hot Pockets are ready. I don't know. What do you guys got? I think, I don't know, it's hard to say because you got Zuckerberg that can lick his own eyeballs because he's a lizard person. Then you got AI Elon He'll show up with the Neuralink put in. They'll be like, nah, that's not fair. He knows all forms of combat. Be good to go. I don't know. I don't think they'll actually fight. I think there's too much liability and stuff like that. I don't think they'll actually fight. But if they did, or if they do, we're going to try and cover it. I don't think we'll be able to on all platforms, but I think it would be hilarious to watch. I didn't realize Elon was 51 years old. I thought he was maybe in his 40s. I didn't know he was in his 50s. Get some J, I'm over 60. Golden Gloves open class. I'd fight Zucky. Yep. I don't think either of these guys got hands. They work on keyboards all day. Kung Fu. Elon will karate chop. Yeah. Sheep. Jitsu is only when you use one leg. Something. Mark, they're both space aliens. Yeah. I think it would be hilarious to watch them fight. I don't think it would be anything like the UFC has ever seen before. John Costello, from a skill point, I'm going with Zuckerberg, but Elon is a quick learner, obviously. Yeah. I don't know. They keep showing Zuckerberg doing training of some sort. I don't know if it's just for the camera or what. And then you see Elon. Elon's nice and round. He's got a round body. He doesn't do a whole lot of training. The only training he does is AI training for his Truth GPT that's coming out. Otherwise, I don't see him doing a whole lot of training. It would be something. Sam, the Musk monkeys. Yeah, see, and that's the thing. It's kind of like fighting a gang member or someone's got a lot of family. You might knock that one guy out, but then everybody connected to him is got a number on your head. So they, if Zuckerberg was to give Musk that KO, he'd have to be worried about, Neuralink monkeys coming after him the rest of his life, and he don't want those problems. That Neuralink, nah. It's like the Matrix. They just plug them in and then they just know everything. Just download the information. They just see red when they see Zuckerberg. I don't know. I keep seeing people mention it on Twitter that they were gonna fight, and then we came across this video. I was like, yeah, should probably cover that just in case. Plus, I want everyone to be aware. So if they really do hold the fight and we're gonna cover it, I want everyone to be up to date on what we're covering there. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if they actually do it. Mr. Beansy Beans, you thought the woman in yellow was cute? I don't know. She reminded me of a protester. To each their own. Everyone's talking about the Musk. I don't know why I keep forgetting what it's called. The Neuralink. The Musk Neuralink monkeys. Everybody's got that on top of their mind. Like, you might beat Musk, but you're not gonna beat his cyber monkeys. It's just not gonna work. That sounds like an innuendo. What are you doing? I'm sitting here beating the cyber monkey. That's stupid. That's all the coffee I have for you guys today. Well, before you guys skedaddle, we're gonna do the spiel deal, and we're gonna do the Pledge of Allegiance. It's the best part of the day. Spanking the cyber monkey. I didn't know. That's some 2023 stuff. Goodness. Dropping these links really quick. Rusty, you'll pay for half the fight. Yeah, if they do it, we're covering it. I want to cover the slap competitions they do on Rumble too, but I can't never figure out when they go live. I just figure it out after it's already over. Alright, hooligans, when you guys get a second, please go over to the link tree. I dropped the link in the chat. It's also in the description. It has all of my links listed, so scroll down the list and go find Gilded. Gilded is free and currently the best way to receive notifications for when and where we go live. There's a news board on Gilded to keep you up to date with everything going on around the world. So a lot of the times for the news that we can't cover on the live, you'll find that in Gilded over on the news board. There's also a ton of hooligans in there for you to hang out with, chatting around the clock every day. So definitely go join Gilded. Also on the link tree, you can find links for the merch store if you'd like to grab some merch. We have shirts, hoodies, stickers, coffee mugs, and some other specialty items. Everything is displayed in black and white or white and black, but if you find something you like, just click on that item and you can see all the different colors that that item comes in. You can also find links for PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, Stripe, Zelle, Buy Me a Coffee, and Locals if you would like to help support what I do. There's also a link to the Amazon wish list if you would like to send me stuff. It's really easy to use. Anything you purchase directly from the wish list will be sent straight to me without having to find addresses, keep track of tracking numbers, or anything like that. It's really simple. And then finally, we have links for the membership programs. We have memberships for YouTube, Gilded, Discord, Odyssey, Rumble, and Twitch. And at the top of the Linktree link there, you can see free membership for a week over on jeffmaclive.com. No strings attached. You're not going to be charged or anything like that after your week is up. But with a membership, you'll have access to your own profile for our private social media area. You'll have access to our group chat rooms and group pages. You'll have access to our live streaming area with the built-in chat. And you'll have access to our advanced messaging system with the ability to text, call, video call, group text, group call, group video call, and the ability to upload all versions of digital media. So MP3s, MP4s, PDF documents, anything like that. Everything can be uploaded. It is the home of the hooligans. So go join jeffmaclive.com. All right, hooligans, you know what time it is. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Well, I really appreciate all of you hooligans. We had a ton of hooligans in the house today, which is awesome. And it was not just on YouTube, it was on all platforms. So that was really awesome to see everyone. A lot of hooligans I haven't seen in a long time. A lot of hooligans I've never seen before. But I'm happy to have all of you guys here with us. Make sure you're subscribed and you join Gilded. That way you can be connected to everything going on around the world. We do this every day except for Sunday, unless Sunday gets really spicy. Because you got to have a day to recharge your batteries. It's important. It is important. Social media and screen time is not just harmful to kids, it's harmful to all of us. And so you got to take some time for you. Don't forget to love yourself. You're a beautiful hooligan. Don't you ever forget it. I appreciate all of you guys. You guys are awesome. Big shout out to everyone that made donations, joined the membership program, or purchased any merch. I really appreciate all of you hooligans, and I would not be able to do this without you. So thank you so much for all your support. I'll see you on the next live. Until then, stand tall, shine bright, and that's a wrap.